Hello, everybody, and welcome to Calls. This is the 2022 Farmers Insurance DFS Tactics show. A lot to get into, but big news that I just found out about a couple hours ago. Charlie Hoffman has withdrawn from the tournament. Mark Hubbard replaces him. So if you have any lineups that you've already submitted with Charlie Hoffman, you need to go and change that. Apparently his back is continuing to act up, as he was listed in the field last week and withdrew and has done so again this week. That is the major news that I have seen. Something else that I want to know from you all is I gave you a lineup last week that I guaranteed would cash in a kind of a double up or a 50-50. I want to know how that lineup did, because I didn't play it. I don't play a lot of 50-50s or double ups or anything. So jump in chat. I want to hear how that did. If you used it, if you used anything similar, or if you thought I was an idiot and didn't go with it. So again, jump in chat. It's open live. I want to hear about all your people that you're thinking about using this week, any narratives that you're wanting to see if it's true or not, any wagers that you've made. I've got a few. I'll put that on social media after the show, which, speaking of, the links to my social media are in the description, along with an email to reach out to me if you want to be a part of bonus content that I provide my subscribers. And then lastly, all statistics are provided by fantasynational.com. Amazing resource. You know the drill by now. Go and check it out. It's well worth the investment. So with that out of the way, let's get into the DFS tactics for the 2022 Farmers. And as we always do, if I can figure out where my mouse is, we come over here to the mixed condition model that I built for the week. And I'm going to tell you right now, I was pulled in many different directions, as I mentioned last night in the Data Dive show. I don't like to have a ton of metrics in the final data model. I generally, have anywhere from 12 to 15 that I look at throughout the week, and then really try to narrow it down. When you see that the highest percentage I have in anything this week is 10%, that'll tell you where I'm at, which is everywhere. I couldn't narrow down exactly what I wanted to look at. So with that, I just went ahead and basically took on everything. Now, if there's any of these metrics that you think play more, then, we'll look into it and figure out who the guys are that you want to focus on, if that's a metric that you think I either need to remove or add more percentage to. I'll make sure chat is up, and we'll start here with generally I like to do a couple of different strokes gained total, whether it's easy or short or long rough. I generally like to see just a grand picture, the broadest I can get, a strokes gained total on a metric or two. And even though it's not all 4 rounds, 3 of the 4 rounds will be at Torrey Pines South, and that is notoriously difficult. So I went ahead and put a full 10% in strokes gained total, difficult to par. And I went ahead and broadened it as well to the last 12 months. That gave me 36 rounds. It went all the way back to last year's Farmers. So I really wanted to get a gauge of who played difficult courses well. Everyone who has followed me for any time knows that I prefer strokes gained approach. I was really on the fence about having this at 5 or 10%, but I just, anytime I'm in doubt, I add percentage to strokes gained approach. It's the kind of player I prefer. Strokes gained around the green, we talked about this last night, how it might be a hidden little correlation with especially the Kikuyu rough, and how it's fairly predictable year over year, especially at the U.S. Open last year, how around the green really brought some guys to the forefront of the leaderboard. And because this course is difficult, you're going to have to scramble. You're going to have to work your way around the green. So on top of around the green, which I don't usually put any percentage in, if I do, it's usually 5%, I went ahead and put a full 10% in that and in scrambling. So I've got 15% in, around the green type metrics. I just think it's going to play very, very important this week. Greens, but not just greens in regulation. Greens when the round is difficult, when it's difficult to shoot par. I really wanted to see who were the best iron players of the best iron players. Your Corey Connors, your Daniel Bergers, and such. So 10% there. 10% at the length of the par fours that are most prevalent here at Torrey Pines. 60% of the par fours fall in this range. So clearly you want to see who plays those holes well. And probably the most important factor, if there's any metric that I needed to add percentage to, it was strokes gained par 5. Just because of the amount of metrics that I felt like needed to be considered, I only had 10% left. Very arguably, I could have put strokes gained approach at 5 and the par 5s at 15. But I went with this. Par 5s are going to be very, very important. It's really I don't want to say only, but it's damn near your only birdie chances here at Torrey Pines. So 10% the par 5s. I want to see who does well on long courses. So like I mentioned with the difficult to par, I also added 5% for long courses, 5% on fast POA greens, 5% each in birdies gained and bogeys avoided, both on difficult courses. We looked at the data in the initial research show where normally I just go with bogeys avoided on difficult to par courses, but birdies gained was actually the more correlating metric of the two, leading to high leaderboard success. So I went ahead and added both because I still have a gut feeling that bogeys avoided is going to be important. So I'll put both of those at 5%. Driving distance, 5%. Scrambling, aforementioned, 5%. Proximity from 200 plus. It was a loose correlation, but most of the approach shots do come from this range. And 200 plus was a lot more indicative of success than 175 to 200, so I went with 200 plus. And then finally, par 4s, they are just the most important metric on the PGA Tour. Put that at 5%. So 14 metrics. I don't feel great about it, at least having the 14, but there is rationale for all 14 of these. Percentages could, certainly argue or be argued to move around and such, but with this data model in mind, at hand, my rankings for the week are, no surprise, Jon Rahm, number one player in the world, coming off by his standards, a disappointing American Express. By anyone else, is a very good week. And what you're going to notice here, especially at the top of the rankings board here, is it's the guys that you would think. And for DFS purposes, that means a lot of chalk. So to explain or tell my top 10, Jon Rahm is number 1. Hideki, Berger, Aaron Wise, and Will Zalatoris are my top 5. Following them are Taylor Gooch, Sung Jae, Justin Thomas, Bryson DeChambeau, and the one probably surprising name here is Cameron Tringali. And we'll get into Cameron Tringali. I really like him this week, but he sits 10th. And then Xander Schauffele is 11th. But again, in DFS terms, there is a lot of chalk in these people. When you get a premier tournament, you generally have you have and you have nots. So you're chalky or you're a pivot. There's really no in between. And yeah, if you want to be unique this week, you're going to have to reach for some players that definitely have their flaws. When I paused, I was trying to collect my thoughts. A lot of contests this week, I really do think you're going to go in on a 5v5, no matter who you take or who you try to pivot to or whatnot. You take Jon Rahm, you're in a 5v5 with a lot of people. Hideki, Zalatoris, Gooch, M. You're in a 5v5 pretty much out of the gate. So what that means is you really need to you kind of embrace that and understand that you could have not the upper tier success in traditional classic contests. Might be more splitting and a lot more similar lineups, or you completely go against the grain and find a lineup that has a projected 4 or 5% ownership. And I do have a couple of those for you that I feel pretty good about, but all of the players there certainly have their flaws. But let's get into some more detail here. We'll sort by the salary. And we'll cover the 10K guys first. Let me bring up the projected ownerships according to Fantasy National. Of the 10K guys, you have Jon Rahm, Justin Thomas, Hideki, Dustin Johnson, Xander Schauffele, and Daniel Berger. There is one very, very clear chalk. He's the projected most owned player in the field. I don't think it's going to be any surprise. It's Jon Rahm. Even at the projected ownership that he is, it's pushing 25%, which is, in a full field event, is quite crazy. Completely legitimate, completely justified. But generally, when I see something that high or someone that high, I'm just out. And if he does well, he beats me. And while that is my gut instinct, there's no doubt that he is the best player in this field. So it's going to be it's going to be difficult for even me to ignore Jon Rahm completely. Considering the ownership he's at, I'm definitely going to try to limit my use of him. But the stats speak for themselves. Look how many top 5 stats that he has in my data model. Second in difficult strokes gained total, first in greens on difficult, first in 200 proximity, first in par 4s. You've got second, third, fourth. He's number 1 player in the world for a reason. My second player in this range, though, is Hideki. I really like Hideki this week. He has had success here at Torrey Pines in the past. I don't want to switch back and forth from Fantasy National to Excel a bunch, but I do want to show you Hideki's success. So let me switch to Microsoft Excel view here really quickly. And you can see Hideki is averaging the 9th best finish of the players in the field. He's played this event all 5 years in the past 5 years, all the way back to 2017. He has never missed a cut, and he's averaged top 30. The approach isn't quite what you expect from Hideki, but when's the last time, if any time, you remember Hideki consistently putting well? I don't remember a time, and he consistently putts well here at Torrey Pines for whatever reason, whether it's the POA, whether it's course comfort, green knowledge, whatever it is, he has putt well here at Torrey. And that is a big reason why I am so high on Hideki. And there are, I'm not the only one in that. But I really, really do feel strongly about Hideki this week. And I think he is a perfectly legitimate beginning of your roster this week. And In fact, I don't mind going John Rahm and Hideki if you're willing to do a stars and scrubs approach where you have some 6K guys that you like. Apologies that I keep looking over here. When I do the software, it kind of jumbles up the tabs that I have up. Anyone who's followed me for any time knows my infatuation with Daniel Berger. He is number one in this field at strokes gained approach. He is elite, even if you don't think of it that way. And again, look, some more top 10 statistics here. I mean, on difficult courses, he plays well. Avoids second best at avoiding bogeys on difficult courses. He's third best in his long irons. He's fifth best in the field on par fours. The putting can be. Oh, I'm sorry. No, that was Bryson. The birdies are, for an elite player, a little low than what you would like. But, I mean, the worst statistic that he has is driving distance. And when you hit enough fairways that he does, and he's not the shortest hitter. He's not long, but he's not the shortest hitter. And that hasn't precluded him or taken him out of contention in big tournaments, majors. So there's a lot to like here with Daniel Berger, ranked third. As I mentioned, John Rahm is the number one projected owned player in the field. Everybody else in this range is from 12.5% to 9.5%. So contestants are kind of mixing and matching if they're going with a John Rahm plus, or if they're fading John Rahm. They're just kind of evenly split, and I feel pretty much the same. I think Hideki and Berger separate themselves from the other three, but it's not so much of a distance that, for example, Dustin Johnson is the most, quote, pivot in this area at 9.5. It doesn't mean that Dustin Johnson's not usable. There are plenty of times that I'm of the lineups that I've been generating, Dustin Johnson is, the headlining my team. So all 6 of these guys are completely usable, absolutely. And I am not going to tell you to fade one, to use one specifically. This is one of the few times in a tournament that it is on you and your gut feeling. I can give you the statistics, but this week it's a gut call. It's a gut feeling. John Rahm being the exception because, like I said, he's pushing a quarter projected ownership, and he's just the number one player. But the other 5, you can make a case for and against. Absolutely. So that's the 10Ks, at least my feel on the 10Ks. Let's move to the 9s, and this is where you really start to see the haves and the have-nots in terms of ownership. So the 9Ks, Bryson, Sam Burns, Brooks, Scottie Scheffler, Jordan Spieth, Sungjae, Will Zalatoris, Tony Finau, and Mark Leishman. There is the second most projected owned player in this range. There's the third most. Quickly looking here. No, I'm sorry. The second, the fourth, the fifth most projected owned player. So it seems like, at least according to Fantasy National projected ownerships, that guys are going John Rahm and a 9K, most likely either Sam Burns, Sungjae, Will Zalatoris, or Tony Finau. Tony Finau is the projected second most owned player in the field right now. I understand why. Prodigious length on a course that is very long. He's always a popular player, used in DFS among analytic communities and just the general public. And I think the third thing going for him this week is his success at Torrey Pines, specifically the Farmers Insurance. Again, I don't want to keep going back and forth from Microsoft Excel, but this is pretty startling when you think about the amount of success that he has had here at Torrey Pines. He is number one in the average finish of the field. He's played this event the last 5 years just like Hideki. He averages a 6th place finish, almost a top 5. And he does it with balance. Off the tee, great. or really good approach, really good around the green, really good putting, just like Hideki. Tony Finau is not a consistently good putter, and he's good to really good here at Torrey. Not to mention, he can go low with the best of them. Sorry, that is out of your view. He can go low with the best of them. He can avoid bogeys if he has to. So there is a lot to like for Tony Finau this week. Last time, hopefully until the Microsoft Excel version of the show, there's a lot to like with Tony Finau. The reason I'm going to almost completely fade him is the amount of ownership. It's just the sheer amount of ownership. Second projected most owned player in the field at 22%. I will accept that if Tony Finau plays well, and it's a very big risk that I'm taking considering his past performance here, if Tony Finau plays extremely well and has another 6th place finish, I'm going to lose. I am much more confident in using Jon Rahm and him playing well than I am Tony Finau at a very marginal less ownership and him continuing the success here at Torrey. So Tony Finau is a fade for me, and that is only because of the ownership. He's a good play. He's a smart play this week. I like too many other players here in this range that are pure pivots that I have to use Tony Finau. The third most projected owned player, Will Zalatoris, probably needs fourth, excuse me. Second, fourth, probably no surprise. Any concern about rust from the fall, ties for 6th at the American Express while losing strokes on the greens. He is fantastic at almost every single stat. The one that is lacking is birdies gained on difficult rounds and difficult courses, but the guy's a stud. You can absolutely, again, like Finau, he's absolutely a good play. And I'm going to use him. And this is why I'm completely out on Finau, is because Zalatoris has a little bit less ownership, and Tony Finau has the the capability to blow up. You see, he can struggle when it gets really difficult. He can get a little wayward with the irons, and the putter has always been streaky. That's why I like Will Zalatoris more, and at just $100 more on the price board, I'll take Zalatoris, even if I'm trying to limit Zalatoris' ownership as well. Sungjae, 5th most projected owned player, a lot of the same, honestly, just a lot of the same. Solid player, coming into form. There was a while there in the late summer, early fall where he didn't lose it. He was just playing kind of whack-a-mole. One week he would lose strokes on the green, then he would lose strokes in approach, and then 2 weeks later he'd lose off the tee. It was just kind of strange, and then he put it all together at the Shriners and has been very good since. So if those and Sam Burns is also very popular in this area as well. Understandably so. He's been on a tear. Number 1 in strokes gained, par 4s. All of these guys, like I said, Finau's a good play. Zalatoris is a good play. Sam Burns, good plays. I'm limiting them because of the ownership. And another reason is, when you take a look at the pivots in this area, there are 3, and the 3 people we haven't really talked about, minus Bryson. He's always right in the middle of ownership. He's very volatile. People either love him or hate him. Brooks, Scottie Scheffler, and Jordan Spieth are the pivots in the area. I'm just going to mention Brooks real quick because I'm out on him. He's at 6.5%. Let's talk about these two. Scottie Scheffler, he is at 9%. He played pretty darn well at the American Express, especially on Sunday when he climbed the leaderboard. Again, he has his flaws. Like I mentioned, if you're not playing chalk, guys will have flaws. But give me a guy that certainly has the upside to win. He hasn't won on the PGA Tour yet. That's just a matter of time. And he is definitely long enough to compete here at Torrey. And then Jordan Spieth. Jordan Spieth is sitting at, to me, is a ridiculous number. Now, do I think he's going to be this littly owned by the time lineups lock? No. Jordan Spieth is very popular among the casual fan and people who just play that aren't in the analytics community. But even so, having seen him at 3.5%, Jordan Spieth is the number one player in strokes gained total, difficult to par. The guy is still good, especially when he won last year at Valero Texas Open. I mean, there was a run there. It was the old Spieth. I mean, the one red statistic he had was putting at the PGA. Look at this run at first, third at the Masters, top 10 at the Byron Nelson, 30th at the PGA, runner-up at the Charles Schwab, top 20, runner-up, top 15. Since the WG St. Jude, basically since the playoffs last year, it has been really bad. It was the struggle Spieth. And perhaps that is a reason why he's not getting a lot of love. He has had middling to poor success here at Torrey. That might be another reason. But again, I mean, this is a no-cut event. 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 So even with that and the irons being as bad as they've been lately, I'm still more aching to believe that Spieth is back to this Spieth as opposed to this Spieth. So I like Jordan Spieth a lot this week because of the ownership. So if I had to rank these guys in, the way I think they're confident just being on the leaderboard, it would be Will Zalatoris first. Then probably Tony Fenow. Jordan Spieth would be probably next to last or last with him and Brooks. At my confidence in them, where they are in the leaderboard. But because of the 3.5% ownership, the fact that he's the number one player in difficult to par. He's number one on long courses. Those generally go hand in hand, sure. He's top 5 in birdies and bogeys on difficult courses. He's top 15 on greens. He's top 20 and around the green. His short game needs no explanation. I like Spieth here, especially as a complementary piece in your DFS lineups. I do not think it would be wise to headline him, like starting at Spieth, but there have been many times where I've gone Scheffler Spieth, DJ Spieth, or if I'm willing to eat the chalk of Jon Rahm and Spieth. I think Spieth is going to be better than a lot of people think this week. So that's my take on the 9Ks. Again, all of these guys, Brooks, I'm never really all that high on just because his data is always, he overperforms what his data says he should do. You can't argue the fact it's big tournament Brooks. So when a major comes around and all that stuff, but generally Brooks is pretty low in my data models because of the pure analytics behind it. But anyway, other than Brooks, all of these guys are fantastic plays. They're fine plays, and this is why I said you're going to be setting yourself up, no matter who you choose, at a 5v5 right out the gates, basically. The only difference is, Spieth and Scheffler right now. Spieth especially so. Let's move to the 8Ks. Taylor Gooch, Corey Connors, Patrick Reed, Matthew Wolff, Max Homa, Seabez, McNeely, Ryan Palmer are your 8Ks. Again, more of the same story. Your haves and your have-nots in this area. You've got Maverick McNeely and Ryan Palmer both above 15%. Then you have Taylor Gooch at kind of middling ownership. The rest are pivots. McNeely, I'm not as high on as everybody else. I can understand why. He's in fine form. He's been playing well. I understand it. I'm just not as high on him. Now, Ryan Palmer we highlighted him in the Data Dive show. He has quite a lot of success here at Torrey Pines. He is at a very, very reasonable spot on the price board. You can work other guys into your lineups at this price. So I completely understand Ryan Palmer. I've been using Ryan Palmer a little bit. But I really want to highlight Corey Connors. Corey Connors right now sitting at 6.5%. Again, like I mentioned at the top of the show, if you are going to use your pivots, they have their flaws this week, but they're still fantastic players. Corey Connors, number 1 in greens on difficult courses, number 10 in strokes gained total. Hey P, hey, I appreciate that you're listening in the car. Drive safe, and I appreciate you tuning in. Hopefully I am not boring just to listen to, and you can't see the stats, but I enjoy what I do, so I appreciate that you're enjoying it. Thanks for tuning in. Corey Connors is a fantastic player. Now the putting can get woeful at times. Let's just be fair. But at 6.5%, him versus a Tony Fenow, you're saving 300, and you're still getting the quality of the player. You're just not getting the prior success at Torrey that Tony Fenow is. But you're still getting arguably just a fine a player. Taylor Gooch is kind of middling in ownership. He's sitting at 12%. I like Taylor Gooch a bunch. He is probably going to be permanently a FOMO for me, him and Aaron Wise. What's there to say? He's, ever since his fall, basically, he was breaking out a little bit last year in the summer, but the fall he really took off. The RSM win. There's a lot to like with Taylor Gooch. And the fact that he's not a pure chalky play, I'll use Taylor Gooch quite a bit. I have Matthew Wolff starred. I really do think last week was an outlier. He played terrible. He was awful. He was close to the worst player in the field. Him and Mickelson were dueling it out in my mind for that honor, if you will. But you look here, Matthew Wolff lost strokes in every single category except around the green. Now, he's a decent chipper usually, but he lost 4.5 strokes with his irons. He lost 2 full strokes off the tee, lost 1.5 on the green, and that's what's surprising because he's a good putter. He's been a very good putter over his career, or his short career. Now, I'm attributing it to rust. And I could very well be wrong. If he blows up this week, then you'll have to rethink a lot of things with Matthew Wolff. But his fall was fantastic. Top 20 every event. 17th at the Sanderson Farms, runner-up to Sung Jae at the Shriners, top 5 Mayakoba, 11th at the Houston Open, which is very, very long and very, very difficult as well. He does need to get the irons ironed out. That's a terrible pun. He does need to figure out the irons. But I think last week was just rust. He's working off the rust of the holiday winter season. I think he'll be better this week. Is he going to top 10? I'm not going to say that. But I think he'll be a useful part of lineups if you're willing to take that risk. He's sitting at Matthew Wolff. He's sitting at 8%. That's a pivot. But my highlight in the 8Ks is Corey Connors. I love Corey Connors this week. I really do. You just have to hope the putting is somewhat there, because the irons will play. The irons will play anywhere. Let's move to the high sevens. You've got Justin Rose, Keegan, Siwoo, Billy Horschel, Joaquin Niemann, Mac Hughes, Lonto Griffin, Cameron Tringali, Luke List, Francesco Molinari, Aaron Wise, Tom Hoagy, Alex Noren, and Jason Day. We'll if I said the same thing about Taylor Gooch, we'll just get my bias out of the way here. Aaron Wise, yes, he's fourth in my data model. He's a permanent FOMO for me. I complete homer for Aaron Wise, so take that with a grain of salt when he's fourth in my data model. A lot of the reason why he's a FOMO is because analytically he's very, very good. But he is actually very, very popular this week as well. He is sitting at 13.5%, which is the second highest in this range. But the second most projected owned player in the entire field is Luke List. And we really highlighted him last night in the Data Dive show. There's a lot to like with Luke List this week. Everything that pops at Torrey Pines, the par 5 scoring, Luke List is fantastic at. And this doesn't even give him justice. He's a lot better than 22nd, really. Distance, he does not lack for distance. He's a good around the green player. He plays well enough when it's difficult. 26th in strokes gained total when it's difficult. Par 4s he does well. There's a lot to like with Luke List, and he has had prior success here at Torrey as well. A lot of people are on Luke List. I'm going to use Luke List. This is why I keep saying there's haves and have-nots. You're setting yourself up for a 5v5 no matter where you go on the price board. I do want to highlight a couple other players. Justin Rose has had a lot of success here at Torrey Pines as well. He's coming off a decent showing at the Amex, so you know that the game is at least there. I avoided Justin Rose a lot in the fall and late summer because I just didn't know where his game was. He didn't play a lot. When he did, it was erratic to bad. He's at least shown some consistency now, so I like Justin Rose this week, especially because of the, like I said, the prior success here at Torrey. I like Joaquin Niemann a little bit. Don't mind using him. Mac Hughes, anytime there is around the green factor, short game factor, you got to consider Mac Hughes. I really like Cameron Tringali this week. Cameron Tringali is sitting at 6% ownership. He is number 4 in strokes gained total on difficult courses. He is number one in the field at avoiding bogeys on difficult courses and in scrambling on difficult courses. Better than John Rahm, better than Jordan Spieth at those two metrics. There's a lot to like with Cameron Tringali. He just doesn't get the recognition that these other players do because he hasn't won yet. He can be disappointing at times when you think something is a good fit for Cameron Tringali. He doesn't play as well as he should, but there's a lot to like with Cameron Tringali this week. If you don't want to play the chalk of Luke List, Cameron Tringali is at the same exact price at $7,600. Love Tringali this week. I'm using both. Using more Tringali just because of the ownership. Let's see. Tom Hoagy has been playing well as well. I was on him quite a bit at the Amex. Led to a very successful DFS weekend for me. He was the one player that didn't blow up in most of my lineups, or else it would have been a fantastic DFS weekend. Thank you, Seamus Power. Thank you, Harold Varner. Anyway, we're on to Torrey Pines. But Tom Hoagy's been playing great. He has the iron game for Torrey Pines. He is decent enough at the proximities. He's decent enough at the par fours. He doesn't get enough credit for how good he is on par fives. He can go low. So a lot to like with Tom Hoagy as well. So Aaron Wise, I'm always going to be on Aaron Wise. The only time I might not be is if he's at 80% ownership. Anything less, I'm probably still in on Aaron Wise. So take Aaron Wise with a little bit of grain of salt with me. Luke List, fantastic play, very chalky, fantastic play. I'm highlighting Justin Rose, Cameron Tringali, and Tom Hoagy in the high sevens. Let's move to the low sevens. There's a lot here, so bear with me here. We have, big deep breath, Mito, Johnny Vegas, Keith Mitchell, Brant Snedeker, Kevin Streelman, Gary Woodland, Adam Hadwin, Carlos Ortiz, Cam Davis, Matt Jones, Joel Damon, Ricky Fowler, Wyndham Clark, Hudson Swafford, Charlie Hoffman, who has withdrawn. So, P, if you joined late and you didn't catch the intro, Charlie Hoffman has withdrawn. So if you've already submitted some lineups with Charlie Hoffman, make sure you change that. Make sure you fix that. Alex Smalley, Patrick Rogers, Michael Thompson, K.H. Lee, Cameron Champ, Aaron Rye, Shez Reavie, Sebastian Munoz, Lee Hodges, Doug Gim, and Phil Mickelson. Did you get all those? Because I didn't. All right, so there's a ton to go over here in the low fours. I don't want to spend a terrible amount of time covering all of these guys. I'm going to highlight a few. Gary Woodland, I think he got a little bit of the rust off this past weekend at the Amex. This is generally a good course fit for him. Don't overlook Kevin Streelman. Kind of in the same vein as Hideki, in the same vein as Tony Fenow. Kevin Streelman plays well when it's difficult and when it's long course. And he's had success here at Torrey Pines. He has. Not as much as Hideki, not as much as Ryan Palmer, not as much as Tony Fenow. I think he has missed the cut once in the past 5 years, but he averages a lot lower finish. So at 7,300, Kevin Shulman, I feel pretty good about being a safe guy if you need to find a 6 of 6 lineup. If you need someone safe, like I said, I think he'd be good for a 6 of 6 lineup to get through. Now, again, because he is a pivot, he's got his flaws. He has no current form at all. None. It's been really bad. The fall was bad. The Amex was okay, but not fantastic. So, if you're a current form player, then avoid Kevin Streelman. But I am believing in the prior performance at Torrey. The fact that he plays difficult courses well. He's top 15 in the field on difficult courses. So I like Kevin Streelman this week. Mito Pereira, this course doesn't seem like it would be a good fit for him. He's a premier player. He's a guy that's going to be he's going to become a household name this summer. I really feel strongly about that. Alex Smalley and Patrick Rogers, I both like both of them. Patrick Rogers is quite chalky for this area of the price board. He is at 11.5%. He is really the only mainly used person in the low sevens. Him and Cameron Davis. Cameron Davis is a little over 9%. I'm just out on Cameron Davis. I can understand the narrative. Long, generally plays difficult courses well, but I'm going to use the chalk of Patrick Rogers. Don't overlook Alex Smalley. I like Alex Smalley quite a bit this week, but I wanted to highlight Kevin Streelman, Mito Pereira. These guys are sitting at anywhere between 6 and 8% ownership. Smalley at 4.5%. I think Alex Smalley is going to do pretty well this week. Now we come down, and I'm sorry, one more person, Aaron Rye. I really like Aaron Rye this week. People don't realize, at least in the stateside, that he won the Scottish Open a couple years ago. He is used to difficult courses and difficult fields and conditions. I mean, he is by far at his best when it is difficult, and it's not even close. Now, the around the green is bad. The putting is bad. He did not have a very good Amex. He lost 6 strokes with his irons and still made the cut. That is incredible because generally he gains. Let's play to the mean or the average. We'll say he gains 1 stroke generally per tournament with the irons, and he lost 6 at the Amex and still made the cut. He is a very good player coming off the Korn Ferry Tour, which he didn't have to play much of to qualify for the PGA Tour. I like Aaron Rai this week. He's a bit boom or bust, but if you're willing to if you have some safety at other places in your lineup, take a look at Aaron Rai. I like his chances this week, and he's at 7K. Now, with the 6Ks, I generally feel pretty darn good about giving you all some values. I really, really try to pride myself in finding some unknown guys or some littly owned guys, cheap guys that you can plug into your lineups, save some money, and use the upper tier guys that you want. This week, to be honest, I don't see a lot. I have tried to stretch and use whatever narrative I could try to use to make things work. I just don't see a lot here. For me personally, the lowest that I'm willing to go comfortably is Dylan Wu at 6,600. Again, another Korn Ferry Tour grad. He plays his best, at least so far in his short PGA Tour career, when it's difficult. The off the tee isn't the strongest. He's never had measured rounds on POA. What I like, the strokes gained approach are really darn solid. Around the green has consistently been positive, slightly positive, but positive. And when you look at par 5 efficiency, he has generally been positive in that as well. The only time this season was in the fall when he was negative. The only time he was negative on par 5s this PGA Tour season, stretching back to the fall, was the Sanderson Farms. He lost 1.5 roughly. He has gained every other tournament he's played in, and we've established how important the par 5s here at Torrey are. So if you're needing some money saving value, I think there's some value in Dylan Wu. I really do. Other than that, guys are gravitating towards Joseph Bramlett. Yeah, I love Joseph Bramlett this week. He has had quite a bit of success at Torrey. Last time, I'm going to switch from Excel from Fantasy National to Excel, but let's highlight Joseph Bramlett here. I had him earlier. There he is. He's 11th best in average finish here at Torrey Pines. Now, he's only played it twice, but he gains 2.4 in approach in those 2 tournaments, and he averages gaining 2.45 on the greens in both of those tournaments. He averages a bunch of greens in regulation in those 2 tournaments. I think he's third in the field in greens in regulation at Torrey Pines for his 2 rounds. And the guy can play. He can play a lot, and he plays well. Is what I'm trying to say. The difference for me with Joseph Bramlett, I have an outright bet on Joseph Bramlett. That is the exposure I am choosing to take on Joseph Bramlett. If you choose to play him in DFS, fantastic. He's a good play. He's just like Ryan Palmer. He's like Patrick Rogers. He's like a lot of these guys. Tony Fenow, Will Zalatoris. Good plays. Chalky for their area of the price board, but good plays. I have my exposure to Joseph Bramlett in an outright bet. It was 200 to 1. So If he plays well, granted he has to win, but I'll be okay losing DFS if he comes in at 200 to 1. I'll put it that way. So of the 6K guys, like I said, comfortably willing to go down to Dylan Wu at 6,600. Pat Perez is an interesting name at 6,500. But Taylor Moore is probably the guy I am most using in the 6Ks. To me, he's the best Korn Ferry Tour grad. It's certainly debatable, but the way he just tore through the KFT, and he's been playing pretty darn well on the PGA Tour. He had a really, really bad Sunday at the Amex. Otherwise, he'd have been top 30 or so. Top 10 the RSM. He top 20 the Sanderson Farms, top 25 the Shriners. He did miss the cut at the Houston Open, another long, difficult course, so there is reason to be hesitant. But like I said, any of these chalky guys, you're going to have to be comfortable with some flaws because it's a bunch of haves and have-nots. So unfortunately, I don't have much for you all in the 6Ks. Hopefully those are three names that'll help steer you in the right direction. But if there's somebody that you like in that region of the price board, use him. This could be something where the fact that I have 14 metrics kind of deflates everybody. And perhaps there's a guy that I'm missing that I should focus more or put more percentage in than what I am. For example, like Harry Higgs played really well the past week at the Amex. He's at 67. I'm not in on him, but maybe I should be. So if you feel comfortable using a guy in the 6K, use him because they're all pivots except for Joseph Bramlett. That was a pretty long-winded look at the price board. Before we switch to Excel, let's look at the wind. And this wind tower is right on the course. So this is going to be a pretty good gauge, at least of the forecast. Wednesday, I almost said Thursday. Wednesday and Thursday, calm, beautiful weather, mid-60s, so chilly. The morning groups will have some difficulty with distance, but otherwise, just beautiful weekend or beautiful start to the tournament. Friday morning looks like it could be windy, but at that point, we've already gotten our 6 of 6 hypothetically through, and then it's just up to who plays the best on the weekend. So to me, I don't see any kind of AM PM favor. It just looks like a beautiful week of golf, and Friday morning has a little bit of wind. That's what I'm seeing. All right, so let's switch to Microsoft Excel. Let me bring up the usual sheet that I have here. Switch over one more time. All right, so one of the biggest things that I always try to do is find some lineups that you can use to pivot off the chalky options for, say, stars and scrubs, balance, and whatnot. But first, what I'm going to do, for those who play tiers contests, I am not the best at tiers. I don't play them really at all. I've dabbled in it. It's not my thing, but for those who play tiers contests, tier 1 is Jon Rahm, Hideki, and Justin Thomas. Take your choice. To me, I would choose Hideki only because I imagine Jon Rahm will be very popular. Justin Thomas will probably be pretty popular. So I'd go Hideki thinking it's a pivot. But choose one. They're all great options. Tier 2, Berger, Bryson, Xander Schauffele, DJ, and Brooks, I believe, are the only 5. Yes. To me, it's Berger, and I think he's going to be the most, maybe not the most unique, but he'll be unique enough. So I'm starting Hideki Berger, getting my pivot in a tiers contest that way, because there's a lot of chalk later. Tier 3, Sungjae, Sam Burns, Scottie Scheffler, Jordan Spieth, Tony Finau, and yeah, that's it. Okay, so again, take a pick. Like Sungjae, great. Sam Burns, I understand. I'd probably have Sungjae before Sam Burns. Scottie, I really like. We talked about Jordan Spieth in Classic, how he's just a pure pivot. Don't know if I'd take him in tiers. Probably Tony Finau would be the safe option. He's probably going to be the most owned. But for me, I'd be between Finau and probably Sam Burns in a tiers contest. Tier 4, Will Zalatoris, Taylor Gooch, Corey Connors, Maverick McNeely, Mark Leishman, Seabass, Bezadenhout, and Patrick Reed. Patrick Reed's your defending champion. I'm out on Patrick Reed. Will Zalatoris is probably the best play. I would go Taylor Gooch or Corey Connors for the pivot, but I mean, Will Zalatoris is probably the best play. Tier 5, Matthew Wolff, Ryan Palmer, Justin Rose, Keegan, Max Homa, Siwoo Kim, and Billy Horschel. To me, it's pretty clear it's Ryan Palmer. Even though Matthew Wolff's the highest rated in my rankings, it's Ryan Palmer for me. He's a safe play. Success here at Torrey. Yeah, I just think it's Ryan Palmer pretty comfortably. Tier 6, Cameron Tringali, Joaquin Niemann, Mac Hughes, Gary Woodland, Francesco Molinari, and Phil Mickelson. Charlie Hoffman was also in Tier 6, so make sure if you do play tiers, you check and make sure you didn't have Charlie Hoffman in Tier 6. For me, in Tier 6, it's all Cameron Tringali. We talked about him in the Classic, how much I love Cameron Tringali this week. If you're not in on Tringali, I would probably go Mac Hughes, just for the short game prowess around the green, putting, and whatnot. So let's take a look at what looks to be the chalky play or lineup this week. It's pretty clear that guys are going Jon Rahm at the top, considering his almost 25% ownership. So we'll start with Jon Rahm. And most of the chalky options are going Joseph Bramlett at the bottom. So that kind of gives us our boundaries of where to work in between. The second lowest guy is Patrick Rogers at 11.5%. So with a Rahm top and Bramlett Rogers bottom, you are sitting at 8,300 per. Let's say, I mean, we're just going to use the chalkiest of the chalk. Jon Rahm, Tony Finau, probably Ryan Palmer. So that gives you 7,800, and without filling in a sixth player, you're already sitting at over 13.5% projected lineup share. Like, you're matching 13.7% of the lineups out there with these five, and you still have a sixth guy to fill in here. At 7,800, the chalky, well, it's Billy Horschel and Siwoo. Neither of those are getting play. So it looks like it's Luke List at 76. So that is leaving $200 on the table, and you're at 17%. 17% shared lineups with your contestants. That's asinine. No way would I play this lineup in a tournament. Maybe in a 50-50 or double up, but even then, boy, that's just chalky. Oh my gosh. So let's see if we can't beat what was a fairly balanced team. I mentioned DJ at the top of the show, but just to use some different guys, let's try Xander. We'll go Xander Schauffele, And then I mentioned how the lowest I was willing to go was Dylan Wu. So with that being our boundary of Xander at the top, Dylan Wu at the bottom, that gives us a little bit less to work with in terms of Jon Rahm versus Joseph Bramlett. But let's see. If I'm going Dylan Wu, I'm gonna insert Alex Smalley for now. I'm really high on him. I can always change that. But now that we've gone Xander, Dylan Wu, Alex Smalley, now we're way ahead of the Jon Rahm, Joseph Bramlett, Patrick Rogers 3. And we're at 3% projected ownership with 3 guys to go. So we're at an average here of basically 8,800. And if we're going to try to build a somewhat balanced lineup, at 8,800 is Corey Conners. I really like Corey Conners this week. Xander, Corey Conners, we can still be in this area of the price board. Let's move up a little bit. Let's try Scottie Scheffler. So now we're sitting at Xander, Corey Conners, Scottie Scheffler, Alex Smalley, and Dylan Wu. We've got 7,900 left, which happens to be Justin Rose or Keegan. I don't mind Justin Rose this week. Performance at Torrey is good. He's finally shown some consistency in his game. We're sitting right at 50,000, and we're at 7.5 projected shared lineup with our other contestants. It certainly doesn't have the extreme upside, like upper end potential. Jon Rahm, Tony Fenow, and whatnot. But this is still a lineup that is going to be, in my opinion, pretty darn good. Xander, a California guy, always plays well. He's one of the top players in the world for a reason. Corey Conners, Scottie Scheffler. So that is an alternate to a pretty well balanced build. You've got a 10K, a 9, an 8, a high 7, low 7, and a 6. Let's move on to what people could be trying to do as a balanced build. It looks like if they're going balanced, they're going to go Sam Burns. Sam Burns, we used Fenow in this other example. So we'll use Zalatoris, but it could be Burns Fenow, it could be Burns Zalatoris. And again, only because we're trying to use different people here. Let's say Maverick McNeely is third for them. They're still at 7,600 per on building a balanced team. There's no way getting around it. We try to use different people. It's Luke List. Looks like they're gravitating towards Aaron Wise. So we have 7,800 again on this ultra balanced team of Sam Burns, Will Zalatoris, McNeely, List, Wise. I mean, you can do Lonto Griffin. He's at 11%. You could go up or down maybe from McNeely. Let's say they are trying to fit maybe a Sungjae. So if they go like a Burns, Zalatoris, Sungjae, List, and Wise, and they're coming down to Joseph Bramlett at 6,700. So there's a balanced build minus Joseph Bramlett, who's in the 6s, but and that's at 15.5% projected shared lineup construction with your contestants. So the chalky 17% stars and scrubs are fairly well balanced. 15.5 pure balance build. The way you're going to get unique in a week like this, if you want to use top tier guys, you're going to have to go extreme stars and scrubs. I mean extreme. And I'm probably not even going to use Jon Rahm, but I'm going to try to build you a stars and scrubs style team that is at least a pivot away from what's probably going to be common. So I mentioned how much I love Hideki this week. So let's start our stars and scrubs with Hideki. I've mentioned Dustin Johnson, but if you follow me for any time, I love Daniel Berger. So we're going Hideki Berger to start. Depending on how much stars and scrubs we want to go, we're at a 10K and we're at 10.6 and 10K. Let's move down to our sixes. See what we're comfortable playing. That'll define our boundaries. Again, I mentioned that I was the most comfortable going down to Dylan Wu at 66. I'm going to use Pat Perez at 65 as a bit of a different name, a little bit of speculation here. I mentioned Taylor Moore at 69. We used Alex Smalley earlier. I'm going to use Taylor Moore at 6,900 just to save $100. You could easily use Aaron Rye, who I mentioned. If you want to take a little bit of chalk, you could do Patrick Rogers at 71. But we're sitting at 8,000 per player. We've got Hideki, Daniel Berger, Taylor Moore, and Pat Perez. If we decide to do Aaron Rye and go full on pure stars and scrubs, then if we go Aaron Rye at 7K, that leaves us 9K. That gives us Mark Leishman. Okay. He's got a lot of prior champion here at Torrey. That leaves us Taylor Gooch. That leaves $100 on the table. But you have a stars and scrubs team of Hideki, Berger, Gooch, Aaron Rye, Taylor Moore, and Pat Perez. If you aren't comfortable with Aaron Rye and you want to move up just a little bit on the price board, you can go Mito Pereira at 74, and then that gives you 86 now. Which nobody's sitting at 86, but you can go Matthew Wolff at 8.2, McNeely or Palmer if you want to add a little bit of chalk or safety. So there are ways to build lineups with your stars. As I've mentioned several times in the show, you just have to be willing to accept some flaws in these other guys. Generally, I feel pretty good about giving you some 6K guys. This week, I'm not as confident. I'll put it that way. I'm going to share with you a couple lineups that I have seen that I feel pretty good about, and they are at 5.5% projected ownership or less. And there's going to be no surprise that Jordan Spieth is at the center of them. Again, 3.5% projected ownership. He's at a fairly decent price on the place on the price board at the low or mid nines at 94. So take a look at this start here. I've had lineups start this way. I've gone Dustin Johnson, Scottie Scheffler, and Jordan Spieth as a top three. Now that's leaving me 7,000 per player left. But I'm getting three, premier players in the world at a discount in one price and a severe discount in ownership. So with this tandem of a stars and scrubs, we can fill out the bottom how we wish with the 7Ks. Again, if there's a guy that you really like, use him in the 6Ks. I've mentioned Dylan Wu and Taylor Moore, Pat Perez. I mean, if you're wanting to take a little bit of chalk, you can absolutely use Joseph Bramlett in this lineup. You're still at 7K per. Choose who you want to. You can go Gary Woodland, 7%. You could go Hudson Swafford if you believe that the current form is going to continue on. I don't like the course setup for him, the course fit, but if you believe in the form overriding that, great. I mentioned Kevin Streelman earlier in the show. He is at 7,300. He has had prior success here at Torrey Pines. He plays difficult courses well. He plays long courses well. Take a look at Kevin Streelman this week. if we've got a 5 of DJ, Scheffler, Spieth, Streelman, and Bramlett, and remember, Bramlett's pretty darn chalky. We're still under 6% estimated shared lineup with our contestants. And we're at 6,800. 6,800 is, Adam Svensson, Patton Kizzire, Taylor Pendrith, Davis Riley, who I've been toying around with a little bit. So we're at 6.2 with that 6. And if we take Joseph Bramlett out, and let's just throw in Dylan Wu, only because he's less ownership and the guy that I've been generating. This is a lineup that I've been seeing a lot, or constructed similarly for me. None of these guys are projected at 10% owned. DJ, Scottie Scheffler, Jordan Spieth, Kevin Streelman, Davis Riley, and Dylan Wu. Now, certainly you have a lot of risk here with Dylan Wu and Davis Riley, but what DFS lineup that you're using 6Ks doesn't have risk? And this is the biggest thing I have to outline for you all. Projected 4.7 shared lineup percentage. We've seen as high as 17% tonight. So there are ways to be unique. Unfortunately, at least in my opinion, you're going to have to be ultra unique to be unique. There is no one pivot, maybe 2 pivots. It's a pretty darn close to full pivot lineup if you're going to be unique. Because most of the time you're setting yourself up at 5v5 regardless of who you pick. That's just the way the projected ownerships are going. That's the way it happens in these, premier events. So, guys, I really hope that that this helped you all. And I just realized that you could not see any of those lineups that I was talking about. That really sucks. Well, I'm sorry. I'll leave you on this lineup that is one I'm very comfortable with at the 4.7. The aforementioned DJ, Scottie Scheffler, Jordan Spieth, Kevin Streelman, Davis Riley, and Dylan Wu. So sorry for the technical difficulty there with the camera and Excel, but that's going to do it for the DFS Tactics for tonight. Again, if you weren't able to catch live, jump in the comments. I will be available to answer your questions, last minute questions tonight. I've got a lot of lineups to submit. I also will be sharing my betting card after the show on social media, so make sure to check that out. For any wagers that you have made this week at the Farmers Insurance, for all of your contests in DFS that you've entered this week at the Farmers, for this weekend and every weekend, may all your bets be profitable.